Hello all, I hope you are well in these extraordinary times. I would like to welcome you all to the Fintech Finance virtual arena where we're going to be hosting you today. We're going to be looking at quite an emotional topic, discussing something that seems to be vilified a bit in the tabloids around the world recently. We're going to be talking about cash. Joining me today we have Fintech Finance regular Ron Delnevo, who has been championing payment choice for decades, and a regular contributor, obviously, for our magazine. How are you holding up, Ron?
Oh, fine. Fit as a fiddle, going jogging, the sun's shining. Couldn't be better.
Excellent, excellent. And we also have Santosh Tripathy from Smartstream, who are you head up the global digital payments practice, right?
That's right, Ali.
Excellent. And you're in the UAE?
Right now in Mumbai. So I was in Dubai. I came to Mumbai on 20th of March. Just wanted to be with the family. Testing times for all of us. So just wanted to be together.
Absolutely. Well, congrats on making it back. 'Cause I know there was a bit of a lockdown on all international travel to India.
That's right. Yes. Just came in time.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so, I mean, the reason I've got you both here is twofold. Firstly, cash is being, I mean, if you read the Daily Telegraph, cash is being vilified as the only reason COVID-19 is spreading.
If only it was the only reason.
Well, what are your thoughts on this? It seems to be the media worldwide. What are some of your thoughts on this attitude? And again, neither of us are doctors, and neither of us are specialists in pandemics. What kind of factor do you think cash actually has in all of this compared to, say, chip pin, swipe and sign, etc.?
Well, if you want me to start on that one, Ali, I mean, the thing is that, yes, the Daily Telegraph ran an article in March which claimed to be an interview with the World Health Organization, and it seemed to indicate that the World Health Organization was that in some way cash could be responsible for the coronavirus. Of course, once you publish such a thing, it then spreads quickly around the world. It becomes almost a tsunami of news. And the fact that a few days later, the World Health Organization made very clear it was not warning people against using cash was kind of missed either deliberately or accidentally by most of the media. So there is no doubt that there was a scare story circulating. But the reality of it is that the real advice from the World Health Organization is after you've touched anything, wash your hands or use sanitizer. And that includes cash, cards, mobile phones, door handles, and so on. So the World Health Organization isn't against cash, but it offers good advice. And if we take that advice, cash will be as harmless as anything else in terms of potentially spreading the coronavirus.
Absolutely. Santosh, what are your thoughts on this?
So I agree with Ron, but I have a slightly different perspective on that. Reason being, in large countries, and I'll bring the perspective of countries like India, where the use of cash is huge, and the cash is moving and changing hands far more uh, quickly than a card. So a wallet or a card or a mobile device is with me forever, but a cash which comes to my pocket or it comes in my hand has passed on through multiple hands and multiple points, right? So in this situation where we want to protect ourselves to the core and we are all locked down, we want to stay home, I would err on the side of caution and avoid cash as much as I can, considering there are chances of it carrying different viruses. Cash has been carrying not just cash, to be honest, any paper can hold any virus or a bacteria for a fair bit of time. And cash, as we just discussed, is passing through multiple hands, has bigger potential of carrying any virus. So in my view, I would err on the side of caution and avoid using cash for the moment. And to me, from the field of digital payments, I'd also see it as an opportunity, the right catalyst, which was required to push a digital ecosystem in the country. So, not using this is a horrified time for all of us, but if the order of the world would change in multiple areas, why not in the usage of cash in general?
Well, I understand the point you're making, Santos, in terms of cash being handled multiple times by multiple people. But the reality of it is actually the research shows that plastic cards carry more germs than cash itself. And the reality is also in a market like India, the card will be handed over. If people are using cards to the retailer, it will be put in a card machine that's been touched by multiple people, and so on and so on. So, I think there are downsides and upsides to every payment method, but the reality is that I don't want to scare people about any payment method. I think that as long as people, as I said earlier, wash their hands or sanitize after using any payment method or indeed touching anything, then they'll be fine. It was interesting, there was some research done in America and they analysed the germs on ATMs, and they found that a McDonald's door handle carries almost 3 times as many germs as an ATM. And so my advice would be, if you touch a McDonald's door handle in New York, wash your hands. If you touch an ATM in New York, wash your hands. If you touch a subway ticket machine in New York, wash your hands or sanitize. So that's good advice. Now, in some countries, it may be more difficult to wash your hands. It may be more difficult to sanitize. So I appreciate that, but that would apply to anything that they were touching, the bags that they were getting their shopping in, the handles of shops they were touching, the counters of the shops, and so on and so on. So there is no doubt that coronavirus can pass through many different ways, but if we can manage our cleanliness and, as I said earlier, our hand sanitizing and washing, most of us should be okay.
Absolutely. I think there was a bulletin from the Bank of International Settlements that was saying that despite public concern, scientific evidence suggests that it's low compared to other frequently touched objects, including pin pads. So I think BIS sort of came to the defence and said, hey, actually, but I think as Ron says, whether it be a plastic card, whether it be cash, whether it be your newspaper, whether it be your letter from Boris, wash your hands after touching it.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear around at the moment, huge amounts of fear, and some of it's rational and some of it's irrational. And I think it's the duty of all of us in payments, but in every other sector of industry, to calm things down, give people as good advice as we have to give, and bearing in mind we're not medics, as you said at the outset, Ali, and try to calm those fears, because the reality is, if we take reasonable precautions, we should mostly be okay, and that's what we must all do.
So with that in mind, Santosh, obviously on the digital payment side of things, being able to make a payment by, say, scanning a QR code at a coffee shop or contactless, what are some of the opportunities for digital payments without having to do any kind of physical interaction?
Plenty, and it has been there. There has been a lot of innovations happening. So NFCs and contactless payments and QR code based payments, they're all in. What we needed was, as I said, an impulse or a catalyst which will drive this forward. And to me, it's not just digital payment, it's about a digital society or a digital ecosystem where the consumer is obviously using all those methods to make the payment, but the retailer is also accepting all forms of payments, and he's getting the payment in time. So the settlements to his account shall happen in time. What we need to understand is how do we motivate the larger ecosystem, the retailers and the other merchants to accept these forms of payments. So while the innovators of the world and the new age players of the world are pushing for new technologies, and 5G would also be Internet of Things would be another catalyst that was required. But I believe what we would get at the end of this whole cycle is a push across the ecosystem to use the newer methods of payments where the contact to physical devices, be it cash, be it card, be it machines, POS, whatsoever, is restricted. And we are obviously following hygiene. But to me, I see this as a great opportunity for the new age payments to take over the traditional forms of payments whatsoever.
Well, this is the thing that I kind of want. What the other kind of sort of half of the argument, of course, is 69% of the world has a bank account. that leaves over 1.7 billion people without a bank account, let alone a POS terminal or whatever it may be. And I do not think that to date any country can claim that they have a 100% population banked. And now half the globe's on some sort of lockdown. That's a lot of people that are reliant on purely using cash. A lot of merchants as well stating that they can only accept cash. What does this mean for the 1.7 billion people who do not have a bank account, who cannot make a bank transfer, who cannot use card, who cannot use contactless? What does this mean for that very large group of people in terms of inclusion?
Ali, I think that firstly, let's not get carried away by the number of people who have bank accounts. There's been a lot of research, including in India, that shows there are many people with bank accounts who never use them. They don't put their money into them, and they may only indeed have one transaction a year, which may be a government transaction. So there may be a lot of people with bank accounts, but many people are not using those bank accounts because they have no money to put in them, or they worry about the cost of using the bank accounts, and so on. Now, in my view, I'm a great advocate of payments choice. I don't want people to have to use cash. I want people to have the choice to use cash. And many people on this planet still want to use cash as a choice. But the fact that there are so many people that have to use cash is certainly something that we need to work on with digital solutions and any other solution that we can come up with to mean that those people have genuine payment choice. Now, in Britain, of course, we only have about 2 million people who only use cash to live their daily lives, out of a total population of over 50 million adults. But the reality is that choice is usually only available when people have some kind of income, some kind of wealth, some kind of resource. So part of what we're talking about here is poverty. And so my argument is quite simple. Firstly, we must allow those who want to use cash to retain that payment choice. And those who currently need to use cash because they have no alternative, we must work towards giving them alternatives so that nobody is compelled to use any payment method, that they're able to select the payment method that best suits them and their lifestyle and their incomes and so on. That's payment choice, and we should all have it.
Right. If I have to add on that, Ali, I see cash, and I completely agree with Ron. We should all have a choice. And I also agree that a lot of bank accounts are just unused because there is no money to spend. Now, why I advocate cashless or other modes of payments which is not related to cash, it's the amount of money that is lost just by printing, storing, the logistics of handling cash. So a study was done by Visa, and 1.7% of the GDP is just spent on handling cash, printing it, storing it, and we're talking about a new situation where everyone wants to optimize that. So keeping cash or removing cash is not an option. There are a lot of people who needs benefits, and the benefits are getting transferred to the account. And one option that I was wondering is if we can use Oyster card for our commute to sub underground trains. Why can't we have all of us, like each individual living in the villages or countryside, have a card like this which gets the money from the government for the benefits or for pensions or other transfers to support them in that card, and they are able to use it across the villages, and they are just able to tap it, or maybe even wearable devices. Now, why cash? And we all know the flip side of cash is, one obviously is storing, printing the amount of money you're spending. The second is in India, obviously it's quite a phenomena, and then you have a fake currencies, and it's a big parallel economy that runs only on cash, be it for other not so nice things. So cash is a great source for bribery. It's a great source for other antisocial activities. So
It's
we
a
have
great
this.
source for bribery.
Yeah, it's easy, right? It's black money. You might have heard of this
It
whole
scores high for
demonetization.
bribery.
the whole demonetization exercise that happened in India a couple of years ago, one of or three agendas per se was getting rid of all these black money people have stacked from illegal incomes, and one was obviously getting rid of all the terrorist activities which will get funded on cash, and third was the fake currencies. So there is definitely a reason to push, and we are moving forward in the right direction. And that what happened in demonetization has prepared India today. When there is a lockdown, no one can go out and get money from the ATM, withdraw money from the ATM. We are all able to use wallets, digital wallets. We are all able to use other methods like Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or even Google Pay to make our purchases online. And this is for those people who were never used to use these digital channels, but because of demonetization, which acted as a catalyst, and people are more prepared today when there's a lockdown and people can't access cash. Leave that aside of coronavirus, there can be different situations, natural disasters, where people can still will not be able to use or access cash because there is no one who is putting money in the machine. There is no banks which are operational, and we're talking about people who have money but they're not able to use it because they have never used a digital channel. So I would advocate that this is a time where we start promoting it more and more for multiple reasons, but also to prepare the humanity. If they don't have access to cash, that does not mean they don't have access to their needs. They can get that paid through multiple ways. Digital is one such way.
Well, I think that if you look at this whole issue of cash and crime, my statement is quite simple. If cash disappeared, crime wouldn't disappear. The criminals would just find another way of making money out of financial services or some other industry. So let's not pretend that cash disappearing actually removes criminals. They just shift their activities to other areas of industry. So that's the first thing. Second thing to say is that in terms of what works in a crisis, most people, and this includes India, do keep bits of cash at home in case of an emergency. And so they do have money to spend in an emergency, and it's usually in cash form, because often digital and other methods don't work because there's no electricity, there's no infrastructure to support them. And I believe that ideas such as Santosh mentioned of everybody having something like an Oyster card is a good one to work on. I think it's excellent because it does expand choices and it does open new avenues for people. But what we've got to make sure is that the economic arguments used against cash are countered with the economic arguments in favour of cash. And I'll just give you one example, and I'll give you an example from the UK. In 2018, in the UK, almost £200 million was used, £200 billion in cash was used by the public. And we were told by the Access to Cash report that that cost about £5 billion in terms of the usage of that cash. Now, if all that cash had actually switched to cards, the cost to the British economy would have been about £5 billion because the commission on those cards, the fees paid, would have been around about £5 billion. So you see, there would be no cost advantage to the UK economy in losing cash. If we lost cash, what we would lose is an option for the public, and more than that, we would lose a competitor for Visa and MasterCard. And without competition, the fees that those schemes charge will inevitably go up. Not because they're bad organisations, but because they are corporations who have a duty to their shareholders to maximise their profit. So we need cash for payment choice, and we also need cash to maintain competition in the payment sector so that we don't have domination by any payment method to the disadvantage of economies and to the disadvantage of the public. But I'm all for more choice. Let's add let's add payment methods to the payment choice menu, not subtract them. When we add one, we don't have to take another one away. Just add and give the public more choice and businesses more choice. That's great. That's great for the economy. That's great for businesses. And that's great for the public.
I do think Santosh's point of effectively like an Oyster card that you can have anywhere. Well, in my view, the birth of fintech over in Kenya with M-Pesa, that was incredible because that was never designed to be person-to-person payments. It was just a simple way of moving phone credit from one to another. But that took over. One thing that cash does
Yeah, but
not
Ali,
have that
let's
I
just mention one thing. Very important to mention this, that more than half the payments on M-Pesa are converted into cash immediately by the recipients. So it's not that M-Pesa is removing cash. M-Pesa is enabling cash to be used more conveniently, and that's great. The marriage of old technology, if you like, and new technology, that works for everybody. They use M-Pesa for other things too, but M-Pesa is often used simply to deliver cash more efficiently to the recipients, which is wonderful.
well, I was say one of the things that I that M-Pesa enabled, which cash by its very nature struggles with, is it has that record of transactions. And if you have a record of transactions, you could then go, oh, okay, this person clearly has income coming in. We've got this data on them. We can use that data to then lend them more money, so they can buy additional carts or whatever it may be, to then expand and encourage just general trade and growth. That's obviously one of the things that we want to kind of marry up.
That's a great
But let's
point. That's a great point. Absolutely.
but let's say for argument's sake, from a technical perspective, let's just say for argument's sake we remove cash on a global scale while still enabling everyone to make payments, avoiding large bank charges, etc. So avoiding the kind of monopolies. Santosh, as a digital payments guy, from a technical perspective, is there any way to remove cash quickly? And if so, how would you even look at doing something like that?
Right. So I always believe that we will find a way if we all come together. And what I have experienced that of late, it was always the push by the central agencies for the usage of cash. Now is the time where people start a movement, usage of digital payments. Now people should start a movement where they want to decide that they will use digital payments as a medium. Now, in terms of charges or infrastructure, there'll be huge infrastructure issues if the volume would increase multifold. It has already increased, but I think we can take care of the technical aspects in terms of hardware, the processing, and everything. The other challenge why there was a resistance of not using a digital payment was all these MDRs, the charges which Visa, MasterCard, any scheme, domestic, international is charging for that particular transaction. Now, I was also thinking of methods, and some I am privy to information that domestic scheme in UAE has already stopped charging MDR for the merchants. And if they were adding 50 merchants per month, it's already 100 merchants per month in last month. I'll remove the MDR. I'll charge one-time installation subscription fee, and then it will be per bucket. So if you do 100 transactions per month, I'll charge you a certain money. If you are processing 100,000 transactions per month, I'll charge you certain fees. So I'll remove the MDR per transaction, which is very complicated. There's no visibility in terms of transparency of what you are charged. As a merchant, you are always thinking twice, okay, have I been charged correctly? Even as a processor, you're not sure if you're charged correctly by the global schemes. The fees are so complex. Simplify those fee structure. You carry on charging for the infrastructure you are providing, for the service you are providing, but simplifies this fees. Get a one-time onboarding fee, then put that into simple buckets on the volume of the transactions per merchant, and then you'll see the amount of merchants and other players getting added on the payment rails would increase multifold. The second challenge is the POS machine. There are a lot of innovations happening, and we don't even need a POS machine going forward. Our cell phones can start acting as a POS machine, and there are apps available which is converting a cell phone into a POS machine. So the cost which a processor or an acquirer had to um, take on just to get a merchant on board would reduce. And if you have lower cost, you can obviously pass on those benefits to the merchant. So I see there are a lot of potentials, there's a lot of possibility. We just have to think slightly out of the box, challenge the status quo, and we will see better results. Cash would not vanish all of a sudden. It will not vanish ever. But if we increase the footprint of a digital payment transaction and take it to the last mile, bring the bank to the consumer. So if the consumer can't come to the bank, take the bank to the consumer. Have these mobile banks. They can go to a village. They can set up a small area where multiple villagers or multiple villages can come and take the advantage of the service we can have. So I can think of some of these options where we can reduce the charges and still increase the footprint of digital payments.
Absolutely. The just on the other side one, of course, is the social and the cultural side of things. Is there a feasible way to anyone that is only using cash to from a cultural and a society perspective to be able to get them to say, actually, as well as having cash, I want to have access to a digital payment, rather than just say no, not don't use cash. How to give them additional options? What's the best way to actively do that?
Well, we already are seeing many options appearing, and Santosh was mentioning some other options that are likely to appear. I think here in the UK and around Europe, in fact, one of the things I'd be interested in is that internet shopping is replacing high street shopping. And Santosh was mentioning signing up merchants. Well, most of the merchants now, the new ones, are online rather than bricks and mortar merchants. So that causes a natural move away from cash, because certainly here in the UK and most other countries, internet shopping does not feature cash at all. So if you're going to participate in internet shopping, you need to have solutions. Now, maybe those solutions, if you're not currently the possessor of a card, are to be given a top-up card or a digital wallet that you can use, so they can work for the public. I don't think we're short of solutions. I'm working on various solutions to make cash more accessible, but those solutions also will make other payment methods more accessible. I don't think it's solutions. We just have to be very careful that what's interest in the overall interest of the public is safeguarded. Just behind me here, on top of my filing cabinet, is a coin which is 2,600 years old. It was one of the first coins ever minted. Cash has been around for 2,600 years for some very good underlying reasons, not to do with criminals, not to do with tax evasion, but to do with the benefits to the public and to businesses. And so, as I said earlier, let's take that 2,600-year-old product, let's modernize it by bringing in innovations that make cash easier, but also let's introduce new choices for the public and have all of those choices presented together on a level playing field, so that the public everywhere, whether it be India, whether it be South America, whether it be Africa or Europe or wherever, get a decent level of payments choice. My one horror is that we'll be forced down one particular avenue, and we know when the public are forced down one avenue, that doesn't work in the public interest. It works in the interest of the person or persons that own the avenue. So let's just increase choice. Let's bring in all this innovation, some of it to do with cash, some of it to do with new payment methods, and let's safeguard the interests of the public. That's what really matters to me.
I have to say, about 2 years ago, I went to China, and it was before, as a foreigner, I couldn't use Alipay, and so my only option was to use cash, and it was very clear to me that people there were. It was Alipay or nothing. Every single time I tried to pay for a taxi, it was, oh no, we don't take cash. I had to then move on to the next one. And I think that's the thing to avoid, is being able to force people into one payment method. But with that in mind, obviously COVID-19 has really brought the use of cash into the spotlight, both from, or arguably from a transmission point of view, but also what is looking like the biggest government intervention on a global scale, and some of the largest distribution of funds that we're going to see in our lifetime. What What key elements has this highlighted, both in terms of public health, but also in elements such as financial inclusion?
Right, a lot, right? So I think Ron touched on a very important topic is about the people who do not have access to cash, even if they have access to bank account, they don't have money in the bank account. So people who are underprivileged, people who have never got access to banking services, and in cases where the government is really willing to contribute. So here we have a huge population of workers or migrant population, obviously working in different parts of the world, but also working in different parts of the country. So people from the villages, they'll migrate to a neighboring city, and a lot of them would work in either Mumbai or Delhi or a Chennai or a Hyderabad or a Bangalore. Huge population is working there, and they're all sending money back home. Now, how are they able to do that? Obviously, they are using bank accounts as a medium. And more and more, we will see this as a situation where the focus of the governments would shift towards this would act as another, let's say, the turning point where governments would realize to strengthen, obviously, healthcare at the local level. Not everyone can run to a neighboring mega city or a larger town for access of healthcare. They should be able to get the healthcare facilities in their village or in the native place. The second is access of cash. They have a healthcare, but if they need access to cash, how can we make that happen? Seamless movement of cash or other payment methods is the way forward. So I would also see as a potential where governments would start investing in new payment methods and how to promote digital channels, access of cash, access of healthcare. All of this would be in discussion or in focus once we are settled with the impact of COVID-19.
Well, Ali, the word that comes to mind to me is fragility. What we've had exposed is the fragility of our societies, the dangers to health, the dangers to all our structures, which suddenly start falling away, society shutting down, companies shutting down, people being sent home from work, people being locked up in their houses. So everything that seems solid suddenly seems fragile. And one does worry how quickly we'll recover from this. And obviously, many businesses may not recover from this. Many employment situations may change forever as a result of what's happening at the moment with the coronavirus. So this isn't just about payments, it's about every aspect of life. And many of us are very concerned that changes will happen, not just in relation to payments, that are not desirable for the public, but may become seemingly economically inevitable. As far as the point about localization is concerned, which Santosh touched on, I'm in total agreement. We must localize more, and that includes for cash. Cash should not have to travel huge distances. Cash can be recycled in local circumstances, either in ATMs or by retailers and other businesses, so that it never leaves or virtually never leaves the community in which it's circulating. That's a good way of reducing costs, and that's also a good way of reducing the carbon footprint. And finally, it's a good way of increasing service standards, because the less distance cash has to travel, the less likelihood it is that a neighbourhood, a community, a village or town will run out of cash. So those are all things that we need to work on. And as part of localization, of course, every locality, every community needs to have payment choice. Now, sometimes currently, communities don't have payment choice, for example, because they have poor mobile signals or poor access to Wi-Fi. So those are technological issues that are being dealt with, but need to be, in some cases, dealt with more effectively if everyone is to benefit. But we've seen how fragile we are. We need to work on that fragility. We need to work on localization. And we need to work on choice. It's going to be a long time before we solve all those problems, but I think we may be aware of them more after this virus, and it may create an impetus towards working together to solve more of those problems to the benefit of everyone.
Agreed. I thought that was very, very well put. I think that covers obviously some of the important aspects when it comes to cash under increased scrutiny. Just to sort of sum up, guys. Thank you very much for coming on to the show. I think we've highlighted some quite interesting points there. Where can we find out more about yourself, Ron? Where can we find out more about yourself and all the work you're doing at the moment? Cashescool.com.
You can find me on cashescool.com. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And you can find me when we start having events again. You'll be able to find me at events around the world talking about payment choice and related matters. But I'm always glad to be contacted by people. So I hope some of the viewers today will feel free to make contact through LinkedIn, Twitter, or whatever. And I'll be very interested in having a dialogue with them.
Absolutely. And Santosh, where can we find out more about some of the work that Smartstream is doing in digital payments?
Right. So as Ron mentioned, I can also be found on LinkedIn, Twitter. I have got a Twitter account with the name Digital Payments. So I'm pushing that also with my Twitter account. And you can find us what we're doing in the space of digital payment on our website. So Smartstream is pushing for seamless, frictionless in payments in the operations as well. So we are always pushing for frictionless, seamless digital payment experience, and Smartstream is pushing for the similar experience in the back office. So I'm writing white papers. I had a recent interview with Euromoney on similar topic. So yes, events, Money 2020, Cybos, we are there in all the major events in payments and in banking. Apart from that, when they happen, we might have a similar event maybe online or a webinar where we are talking on topics of our interest. But yes, apart from that, all the social media, I'm active, I'm available, and as a company, we can you can find a lot about our what we are doing from our website, smartstream-stp.com.
Brilliant, awesome, cool. Well, stay safe, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
and
Alan.
yeah, we'll catch you all very
Nice
soon.
to meet you, Santosh. Thank you.
Thank you.